Today I'm going to be taking a look at the Mocute 060 Bluetooth games controller for your phone. It's incredibly cheap, but is it any good? Let's find out. In the box you get the controller and instruction leaflet. The controller feels incredibly light without feeling flimsy, and it weighs in at 171 grams. It has a 400 milliamp battery which is charged over micro USB, and according to Mocute, when it comes to continuous game time, they say you can expect 40 or 160 hours of use from it. I haven't put the battery life to the test, but I'd be willing to put money on it that you're going to get nothing like those numbers. Certainly for me, one of the big attractions of this controller is that it is listed as being able to take phones up to 185 millimeters long. And I've had problems trying to squeeze my LG V60 phone into a GameSir X2, but the Mocute has no problems accommodating this phone, even with a case on. In terms of the D-pad and buttons, let's just say they definitely aren't up to Microsoft Xbox or 8BitDo standards. The buttons, which measure just over 9mm in diameter, don't have a great feel to them. I mean, you definitely know that you've pressed them and they work fine, but just don't expect the sort of micro switch experience or clickiness that you typically get with buttons on more expensive controllers. The D-pad is something I absolutely hate. It's in the style of a PlayStation D-pad, and each of these four segments act like individual buttons rather than the type of D-pad I prefer, where it pivots around a central point. I thought it was going to be borderline unusable, but I was surprised to find that for the most part it worked okay. The shoulder buttons and triggers continue the bargain basement feel to everything, and are probably one of the worst things about the controller. Obviously, at this point, you aren't going to be getting analog triggers, and the triggers are comfortable and functional. There's a positive feel to them when pressed, but like the ABXY buttons, they lack the same sort of clickiness you come to expect from digital triggers on a premium controller. But then this isn't meant to be a premium controller. The real issue is the shoulder buttons. The left one can be pressed from anywhere along the length of it, but not the right one. Press it at the far end and there isn't any sort of click, and you have no feedback as to whether it's even working or not. And even though in gameplay the buttons seem to work, clearly it isn't meant to be like this, and there's some sort of quality control issue. I don't know if this is a common problem or something just affecting mine. In gameplay there seemed to be no noticeable lagginess or latency issues, and I was pleasantly surprised to find the D-pad was not as bad as I thought it was going to be. It worked okay in all of the games I played. For me, I found that fighting games probably suffered the most with the controls on the Mocute. Not just the D-pad, but all the controls. I suspect this is due to the fact that the ergonomics on this control are just horrible. At first glance, it looks great, but the placement of the D-pad is bad. The little extensions that look like they'll help you grip the controller better just don't help at all. The whole thing felt incredibly unwieldy and awkward in my hands, and almost like it hadn't been designed for human hands at all. I'm not sure if they did any long-term tests on this before releasing it, or any tests at all for that matter. One other issue I want to mention is that on the different phones I tested this with, my results were quite mixed. On one phone it worked okay for the most part, but on another phone it just kept losing the button mappings in RetroArch, sometimes mid-game. And the button mapping thing was just weird, not just in RetroArch, but as a general problem with this controller, with whatever I was testing it with and however I paired it with a phone. Honestly, it's a shame. This is a controller that at first glance looks pretty good. It can take larger phones that far more expensive controllers just can't fit in. And at the price of between $14 and $24, it's incredibly cheap. But it's got far too many issues for me to recommend it. If you're on the lookout for a great controller for mobile gaming, then check out one of my other controller reviews that are on the screen now. Would you consider buying this controller given its low price point? Let me know in the comments section below.